6. Welcome to everybody joining us from Facebook and from YouTube. You are yet to enjoy another exciting conversation that we are having today with Mr. Nhlakanipho Chiliza, who's going to be sharing his exciting story or his journey in life, which is a very, I found it a very touching story, which I think any human being living on planet Earth should hear this story because it's really empowering, it's inspiring. It's one of those stories that makes you feel, even if you think, my life is tough, I can't do this anymore. But it's one of those stories that makes you feel I can do it. I can continue, I can pull through. So I don't want to preempt a lot of things. We welcome Mr. Nhlakanipho. Then he's going to take about 10 minutes or so to tell us about his story, share a bit of what is it that made him to be what he is today, the journey, the challenges, and all that. So I'll give him about 10 minutes without disrupting him and let him share his story. And then after that, we'll get into a conversation. I'll ask him a few questions. And also, wherever you are, Facebook or YouTube, if you want to ask him questions, you can drop your questions on the chat. And if anything pops out while he's talking, just drop it on the chat. And then when he's done, then telling us a bit about his story, then he'll attend to those questions that you will have put on the chat. And also introduce yourself, so you can put on the chat, say, hi, I'm blah, 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 I'm joining you from blah, blah, blah. And yeah, we're happy to have you and excited to share the story with you and interact and then see what we can learn and get encouraged in the process. Mr. Nhlakanipho, welcome. And we are happy to have you today. And we are looking forward to sharing your exciting story. So I'll give over to you, and then you can share with us what you want to share. Introduce yourself first, and then you can start and sharing your story.
And the audience. So for me, it is a great honor and heartwarming to be part of this extraordinary session. This is the important month, the youth month, but the story that I'm going to share really is relevant to everyone, regardless of age. I'm going to share my experiences, and I hope that people will learn one or two things out of my experiences. Even though over 10 minutes is not that much for the journey that I've traversed, but I believe that I'll be able to elevate the key events that are still in my mind. And thanks to everyone who have joined this session. So who is Nhlakanipho? I was born and bred at Tlogos, a small village in the south coast of KwaZulu-Natal. I was raised by an extraordinary woman, my grandmother, who was a breadwinner to a humble family of 15 members, which includes my 7 cousins and neighboring kids who opted to stay at our home. And this was a general practice at the village. So I was that child whose father was married to a stepmother and whose mother was at some point got married to a stepfather. So I didn't have a close relationship with my parents during my upbringing. So we survived at the village through subsistence farming. The reason being our grandfather left my grandmother with her 3 daughters without any form of support. So my grandmother had to find ways really to sustain the family. And at some point, the situation got worse up to the extent that her daughters, including my mother, had to drop out of school and relocate to Durban to seek employment opportunities. And I think the situation exacerbated when we were born because we were all a burden to my grandmother, even though she didn't express it that way. So I think the situation at some point improved when my grandmother qualified for a government grant. So we call it a pension, because at that point we were able to buy basic groceries such as the maize meal, rice, and cooking oil over and above the harvest from subsistence farming. And there was a point during, I think, my upbringing when I relocated to Durban to stay with my father, my stepmother, and my brothers. But it didn't last long because within 3 years, my father passed away, and my stepmother had to take the responsibility to sustain the family. I believe that the situation or the affairs deteriorated to the extent that some of the neighbors noticed it, who took it upon themselves to fetch me from my father's place without any notice. And they sent me back to my grandmother's place at the village. So that is when I completed my matric. So I went back, I did grade 7 up to matric. But maybe with the interest of time, the critical things to note during my schooling is that at the early stages of my schooling, I was an average performer. But when I reached grade 6, I met an incredible, a compassionate teacher who told me that I was brilliant and that if I can put more effort, my performance would improve. So because I didn't hate that before, it really motivated me and I worked very hard. And from grade 8 to grade 12, my performance improved and I was part of the top 3 at school. So even when I was doing grade 12, I think we had credible teachers, especially for accounting and economics, who motivated us to pursue become accounting stream, even though the career guidance at school was not there or it was not that good. But at least I worked very hard to pass matric with the flying colors so that I can pursue that career. And over and above that, when I was doing matric, my mother promised to buy me a check parcel. So the people who grew up at the village know that a dream of a village boy or girl is to go out of the village, to move to the township, to earn a better life. So I was one of that as well. So my aspiration when I grew up as a school child, one was to finish matric, leave the village, and also was because of the promises, get my jack parcel so that I can fit in the township lifestyle. And over and above that, I wanted to pursue the accounting stream. So to pursue become accounting career. Unfortunately, not all my aspiration unfolded accordingly. So when I finished my exams at matric, immediately I headed to Durban. And then I had to pass by my mother's place to get my jack parcel money so that I can pass by the nearest town, which was Sipingo in Durban, buy jack parcel and head to Umlazi, where my grandmother from the father's side stayed, because I was going to stay there moving forward. So when I arrived at my mother's place, unfortunately, my mother could not raise the entire 200 rands because she was sick. But I could not realize that she was sick because in my mind, I wanted to get this money, move on, and get my check parcel and start the new life at Umlazi. Obviously, I took the money and it was 200 rands and I was sad. And I told him on the face that, look, I was expecting 300 rands. Why now am I getting 200 rands? She said, no, I'm going to give you the rest of the money later. And I think I didn't show any sense of appreciation. I took 200 rand and left her like that. A week after that, obviously, I was called at the hospital. It was an urgent call to say, you need to come and see your mother. She's at a critical stage. And I went to the hospital. Obviously, she was very sick. When I arrived, they told me that she cannot speak. But when I arrived at the hospital, she was able to ask me 3 questions whilst crying. The 3 questions that she asked me if I was fine, I passed matric, and I had registered for my studies. And 2, 3 questions because of the situation, I said yes, everything was fine. And I registered to study. I did and then passed my matric. And I left her obvious from there. And then unfortunately, few weeks after that, in fact, a week or 2 after that, I received a call that she passed on. Okay. And I only realized during the memorial service when my grandmother called me on the side and she told me, she asked me if I had a quarrel with my mother. And I told her that no, I didn't have any quarrel. So there's nothing that I can recall. But my grandmother told me, look, there is something that took place, and your mother told me to apologize on her behalf. She was definitely willing to buy you a Jack parcel, but the situation didn't allow, and she didn't know what impact that was going to make. And I learned a lesson during that, because obviously I didn't show any sense of appreciation, but I realized a lesson at a later stage when my eyes open up to say sometimes as young people, we don't know what our parents go through, and we expect things that are impossible, and we don't show appreciation on the little that they do. So just to fast track, because of the interest of time, Dr. J. So obvious from that point, I faced the reality of township life, because I didn't have anyone to lean on. I didn't have any sort of, I think, support, because especially to further my studies. And I think even for things like food, I have to be mindful of how much food a person could eat. And I ended up working as a taxi conductor and a garden boy on over as a part-time basis, just to generate finances to continue applying for bursaries, and also to buy some cosmetics and have extra cash for food. And obviously during that time I was staying at my father's home. So what kept me going when I was staying at Umlazi was the fact that it was after school. So some of the kids realized, identified, especially the neighbors, that I was good in maths and accounting. So they requested me every afternoon to help them at the library with the studies. And that kept me going. And they also asked, why are you not studying because you are brilliant? But I could not tell them that I didn't have any form of support. I told them that, look, I took a break and I'm going to start the following year. So that was basically my life in Durban at glance. And my hope, I think, was resurrected by the application form that I received from one of the teachers from Shogo. So my grandmother had to send someone from our school to take the application form to me in Durban. When I received that form, I was on top of the roof washing somebody's roof. I was working for somebody, obviously as a garden boy. So I got the application form, I applied, and I got a positive feedback from Cedar City campus. I didn't know if the institution was accredited or not, but at least it was a sense of hope, because it was an opportunity to move from the situation that I was facing at the time. So I obviously, after being accepted, I said that some of the family members said, no, it's not a right decision to move to Joburg without even knowing how are you going to survive there. But some of the family members encouraged me to go to Durban, especially Anjabu from my mother's side. So I did relocate to Durban. When I left, I only had 800 rands in my pocket that I've raised as a garden boy and a taxi conductor. So I left to Durban, and fortunate enough, when I arrived to Joburg, I was accommodated by a widow that I was linked with by my cousin. So I said, no, look, I understand your story. So please stay at my place in Tembisa for 2 months whilst we are sorting out your applications or registrations with Cedar City campus. So I stayed with her without paying any rent or even for food. So she provided meals. And during that time, she was still even wearing the morning clothing. I really appreciated that opportunity. I stayed with her, and I paid her basically by cleaning the yard, cleaning the house, and cooking after school. So every time when she comes back from work, she was a domestic worker. There was food already prepared. Okay, so after that period, so when things were done at Cedar, I had to relocate to Johannesburg. And again, that is when I had to face the reality of Joburg, because obviously my bursary at Cedar covered only tuition fees. So I had to find ways to strive in the new environment, and also obviously to develop myself, because I think I was a bit behind to other students, because I did all the subjects in Zulu. So I had to learn English fast and to familiarize myself with the environment and to compete with other learners at the right level. So what I ended up doing, I ended up getting a job at Discount Food. So where I was distributing pamphlets on after school and earning 10 rands, and on weekends, obviously doing stock taking, distributing pamphlets and cleaning the store. And obviously I was earning 40 rands on Saturday and Sunday. And that money was enough for me to pay rent and also to buy food, because we're staying in those hijacked flats in the heart of Johannesburg with other learners who were coming from other parts of South Africa. So I think we're 6 in one room. So we had to contribute about 90 rands each for rent. So that is how I survived, basically. And to develop myself, so I joined youth organizations just to make sure that I get an opportunity to participate in the meetings. And I developed myself up to the extent that for some organizations, I ended up being the leader up to the national level. Organization like your Black Management Forum and the South African Student Congress. So I was able to showcase myself, and I ended up leading some of the structures of those organizations. And obviously, I finished CEDA, and then I moved to the job. I think so now I had to find a job. And I think during the student life, maybe just to backtrack. So one of the things that I did as well there was to find mentorship. So as part of the student activist, I made sure that I find mentors that are relevant to my aspirations at the time. And obviously, the first job that I received it from my mentor. I didn't apply for it at Cornerstone Consulting. And obviously, Hamilton Radzefola, who was my mentor, said, no, just come and join my company. He was the founder and the CEO of Cornerstone. And when I joined Cornerstone, I think I landed on a fertile ground because we continued from the mentorship. So I sat on the board meetings and the strategy and executive meetings to take the minutes over and above the job that I was employed for. So that gave me an overview of how companies operate. But I think because of the close relationship with Hamilton, it didn't resonate very well with some of the directors, which resulted to the situation whereby some directors really acted very bad against me. And Hamilton find it important to move me from Cornerstone to one of the subsidiary companies that he owned, because the situation was hostile. And that is when I took an opportunity to apply to other companies. And during that time, my aspiration was to move to Accenture. And indeed, I think when I moved from Cornerstone, I got an opportunity to think properly, and I was able to meet with the agency that obviously I engaged with, and which took my CV to Accenture. And I went for my first interview with Accenture, and the lady who interviewed me really liked my personality and my development, because she could see that I studied at the college, but I was able to develop myself up to the extent that I led some of the national organization to that level. And I was competing with students, obviously, who were coming from well-off universities and better background than I. So when she presented my CV to the group of senior leaders at Accenture, one of the people obviously rejected my CV on the basis that the college where I studied was not a good college, and that the culture of the students from that college was not strong enough for someone to cope with the Accenture environment. And it sounded like a person really knew me during my CEDA life, based on the feedback that I received from a person who presented my CV. And she said, look, this is the feedback, and I'm definitely going to re-showcase your CV if the opportunity presents itself. So I had to navigate through and identify exactly what is the way forward, because I really wanted to move from out of Cornerstone. The environment was not right, and I believe that I had exhausted the opportunities at Cornerstone. So I looked at my business card, and I remembered that I had met William Zimba at that point, who was an MD of Accenture Management Consulting. So I quickly prepared my profile. My CV, and a cover letter, and I sent it back to him and said, look, William, I want you to go through my CV and check if I qualify to be an Accenture candidate. Look at my leadership credentials, my personal development, my character, and so forth, and advise me accordingly, because I really love to join Accenture. And just to cut the long matter short, William Zimba sent the CV to his teams, and I ended up being employed by Accenture. But one thing that worth noting is that at my next stage of the interviews, there was this one woman that supported me during the interview. And I could say, I felt like I know this woman from somewhere. And she was a person that when I started introducing myself, she was in accord. She was supporting everything that I was saying. And she even indicated that, look, I know CEDA is a very credible institution. And I knew after that interview that I was successful at Accenture. So what transpired was that, so when once I was at Accenture, one of the colleagues told me that, you know who rejected you. So I didn't even know that people knew about that. So a person told me, a person who rejected your CV was that lady. And the lady that they pointed me to was someone who supported me during the interview. And I think so. I've been exposed during my work life. I've been exposed to incredible mind. I've been exposed to different countries. I have a global exposure. Currently, I work for ABSA Capital. It's an incredible institution, and I work with very good people who are supporting me on my career. So family-wise, maybe before I summarize. So family-wise, I'm married now to a very beautiful and wise woman. We have a functional family that has very specific value system, a vision, and we have beautiful boys, 3 boys. And I can say that so the foundation that was laid by my grandmother really played a pivotal role to make me a person that I am today. So, Dr. J, just in closing, I can say that so in most critical stages of my life, from varsity to employment to marriage and so forth, I was the first generation I had to navigate through and to ensure that I succeed in whatever I do. I think that is it in short.
Okay, thank you very much, Nhlakanipho. Every time I listen to your story, it's really a very touching story, and I think it shows really the perseverance and how much you really wanted to achieve what you have eventually managed to achieve. And if I may ask a question, so you talk of all these difficult things that you have gone through, and starting from a very early age, which were things that look like really were not something that a young person could handle. What is it that helped you to stay on and to hold on until you got where you wanted to get to?
Dr. J, so there's multiple things that really contributed to my success because I'm definitely proud to call it a success. I'll tell you why do I call it a success at a later stage. But for me, I think it was a sense of purpose. From the young age, I've always have a dream of taking myself outside of the situation that I was facing. So for me, so that sense of purpose really helped me to navigate through, because if someone has a sense of even like the next, a purpose or a dream may not be that explicit, but if you definitely have a purpose or a dream to say tomorrow, I want tomorrow to be better than today, it really goes a long way. But another thing, I think it was God's grace, because throughout different stages of life, there are situations where I don't know exactly how did I get through. But through God's grace, I was definitely, I think I was definitely successful in certain instances. And the other one is self-awareness. So I think over time, through experiences, I developed a great sense of awareness that helped me to define who I want to be, an ideal self. So that sense of awareness helped me to navigate through the situations. And where I felt that I didn't have abilities to carry myself through, I was able to identify critical or key individuals to support me during the process. So the last slide that I've projected were the individuals who really supported me throughout different stages of my life. So maybe just to summarize the question, so it was just a sense of purpose. I think it is important for everyone to have a dream or a sense of purpose. So I think you definitely need the higher power, God's, or a sense of belief on something, so that if you fail, you know that you can fall on your knees and pray, or to relate to the higher power that you believe in. And the other one, obviously, is that sense of awareness, that if you know who you are and where do you want to be your ideal self, then it becomes easier to navigate through the situations. And mentorship and coaching also plays a pivotal role to personal development.
Okay. No, thank you for that. I see you've got the slide there. You want to tell us maybe a bit, those people that you have there on the slide, what role did they play in your life, and who are the people that maybe you want to, I know you won't be able to talk about each and every one of them, but the few that you think they were key people in your journey, that helped you big time, that every time you think about your journey, you remember those people.
Yes. So if you look far, is it far left or far right? So the lady who's not wearing shoes, so that is my grandmother. I think that is my champion, a lady who really played a pivotal role in laying a foundation for my life. A person who taught me that sense of purpose, and yes, a person who taught me contentment, a sense of purpose, and self-worth. So that is my grandmother, and the person next to her is my wife. So my wife had played a pivotal role in my in my development, especially at the later stages, because that is when we met. And also another person that I really need to note here is Dr. Blecher. Dr. Blecher is the founder and the CEO of Cedar City Campus. So this incredible man really carried us through. He was treating us as his children. And maybe another people, let me just pick a few people. And another person is Hamilton Razifola, this one, and Mapula Razifola, his wife. I met his wife when I was a provincial chairperson of the Black Management Forum in Gauteng. And when I met the wife, we were running a mentorship program. And because of my values, I took it upon myself to ensure that all the students that were leading get mentors before the leadership. So at a particular stage, she highlighted that Nhlakanipho, we've got mentors for all the learners, but we have not got mentorship for you. So who do you want you to be my mentor, to be your mentor within IBM? During that time, she was one of the directors at IBM. And I told her that I want you to be my mentor because I really admire your personality and your passion to see other people being developed. And she said, no, look, I cannot be your mentor because of your character and your personal ambitions. So, but let my husband, which is this one, Helmetin, be your mentor. And that is a person who's a founder of Cornerstone. She said, my husband is a businessman and a founder of Cornerstone. So let him mentor you. And we clicked very well with the husband because I think our background and personalities resonated. So those are other people who played a pivotal role. And also we have Presley Knight, who played a pivotal role at Accenture. I think he came at the right time when my career was really going down the drain because of my previous project. But he was able to carry me out. And I think he was one of those messiahs who came when you really needed someone to support you when your career goes down. And this guy here, Timothy Webster, really supported me as a student. So that is a person who took me to uncharted territories. So Timothy Webster oversees a a personal branding philosopher. So that is a person who identified that my background created limitations because I could think up to a particular extent. And he started exposing me to different exclusive books to say, I remember that when we went to exclusive book in Santin, he was able to say, look around here, who are the people here? I said, no, I can see the people. They said, no, I don't know who are they. He said, no, just look at the color. I said, no, I can say that it's like 99% or 100% white people. He said, yes. Did you pay any money to come here? I said, no, I didn't pay. But look, we are reading a book. And then he said, the reason why white people go to exclusive book is because there's a lot of knowledge, so they read. And then these are the places that you need to visit on a regular basis. And he could take me to some of his sessions because he used to run session. He was an author, and he used to run session like the motivational talks. And he could take me to some of these sessions. And he really played a pivotal role just to change my mindset to say, do not allow your background to determine the extent within which you think. And I think another person to mention here, maybe let me just mention at a high level. So there is Dr. J and Dr. Nomusa Zondo, who really played a pivotal role during my MBA. William Zimba and his wife Mapule, who played a pivotal role, especially Mzimba at Accenture, because without knowing him, really I wouldn't get an opportunity at Accenture. And I have Dean Barclay here, who's my current line manager. He really played a pivotal role to ensure that I learned very well at APSA. And he's a person who even gave me some of the finances to further my studies. When I came to APSA, I only had a qualification from CEDA. And this is the guy who sponsored me to go through UNISA, and then after UNISA with West Business School. And also I've got my aunts here, Aunt Chabu and Aunt Bongi, who really played a pivotal role in my upbringing. And there is Eric Keswa here, who exposed me to self-awareness. And I remember the topic that we used to discuss at the beginning whilst I was a student. He was a manager at ESCOM. So he used to take us to say, what is life? Spend a lot of time trying to define what is life. And also to say now, relate life to yourself. And there's Valentine Day. Then when I was a student leader, and things sometimes got worse because we had to fight for the rights of the students. And he was one of the lecturers. And he did support us as student leaders during our struggles when we were students at Cedar City campus. And I'm still have a connection with him even up to this point. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for that. I see you've been surrounded and supported by a lot of people. And I think that is something important to note to our listeners there and those who are watching out there, to say, in life, you don't make it alone. So you need a support system. You need other people to support you. And these are just a few people that Hlakanipho is mentioning, but for sure there is more people that supported him. And that support helped him and kept him insane. Kept him sane. One of the questions we have here from Patrick Tambo from the YouTube side, he says, very inspirational story from humble beginnings. He's asking what kept you going despite all the struggles that you went through. I think that's what you've just explained now. You had the support, you had the strong why, the purpose, and you mentioned also you had God and all those things that helped you and kept you going. Let me just go to the chat so that our audience don't feel left out. Just to acknowledge people who are joining us. Sihle, we're happy to have you. Lumka, Motlale Pule, and Patrick. Okay, Patrick, I just read your question. Kawai saying, wow, I have worked with you. So this is somebody who knows you. Tulani. And yeah, so most people are saying this is a very inspiring story, moving from being a garden boy, from being a taxi guy, to becoming what you are today, and becoming a professional and doing all these things that you are doing. And we're really appreciative the fact that you were willing to come and share your story, especially during Youth Month, because what you find most of the time, our backgrounds tend to play games with our minds, and we think our backgrounds what are really supposed to determine where our lives end. And it's encouraging to see that you did not allow your background to stop you from achieving what you wanted. When we were talking the other time, you described your journey as misery to jubilation. If you were to relive your life, will you choose it otherwise?
No, 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 for sure, Dr. J, because look, for me, I believe that everything that happens in our lives happens for the reason. And what is important is that every situation that you go through, you have to learn a lesson, because sometimes you experience a good, so you find yourself in good situations that makes you think that this is the ending. And sometimes you find yourself in miserable situations that makes it like it's the end of life. So for me, what I went through, I believe that it was for a fundamental purpose. If I didn't go through the experiences that I went through, I wouldn't be a resilient person that I am today. So even if I can live another life, I would say that, so let me go through that particular process so that at the end, I'll be a more refined person, because really in the environments where we find ourselves, there are people who doesn't know that as we live, there is someone who does not have something to eat. And people live below bread line sometimes. And on the other hand, you find that some people don't know that there's someone who has abundance, and they every day they have to throw food away. So for me, I think God has given me an opportunity to live a balanced life, and also has exposed my eyes to learn at each and every stage that I've experienced or I've lived.
Okay, thank you for that. I see Tulani says, Nhlakanipho, all these leaders who have impacted your life, and how far you have progressed. What is the one thing in common, or as a common factor that you believe helped you foster deep relations with them? So I guess this is somebody who's looking to understand as to, you got all these benefits from all these people, and these are phenomenal people, and they supported you. You got mentorship. They helped you through your journey. What is it that you had, or that help you to make sure that you can have these relationships with them?
So you know what, for me, one thing that Hamilton told me is that he has never met such a young person with a fighting spirit that I have. So for me, I think it was that fighting spirit and a sense of purpose to learn, because people find it easier to help you if you know what you want in life. You know, you can have everyone surround you. You know that people come from different backgrounds. You find that people who are coming from a very strong network, but they don't thrive in life because they don't know what they want in life. So for me, I think the common thing that these people observed in me, it was that fighting spirit. And I think I was able to narrate my story very well as well, to say, this is where I come from and this is where I'm heading. Do you want to be part of the journey that I'm traveling? And people find it, I think, worthwhile for them to support my journey. And again, I can tell you that maybe if I answer the question other way around, to say, what are the commonalities that I've found in these people that really created a sustainable or a meaningful relationship between myself and them? And I can tell you that, so the spirit or the value system that these people cherished is that all of them were selfless. They were willing to support someone without expecting anything in return. I can start from my grandmother. Maybe it was Vincent Mapai that you can see here. I met Vincent Mapai during Brightest Young Minds, when he related his story that he grew up at a shipping. My grandmother at some point had a shipping. His story resonated with me, and I just requested to meet him at his offices at BHP Billiton, and we took it from there. Puti Mahaile also is the same situation that I met with her. So I think I was clear on what I wanted to achieve, and all of them were willing to support someone with a dream.
Okay. That's powerful. So if people see your drive, people see you know what you want, people will support you, and without expecting anything in return. And because you are committed in your journey, then and also you acknowledge them, you go to them for that support. Then those deep relationships build then from that. So that is powerful, and I think sometimes we take for granted the relationships that we have in terms of the social capital we can get from them. Sim Mutlali Pule says, very inspiring. It really shows that your background does not define you. I've got Florence says, I'm inspired by your journey, which has taught me that perseverance is key, and that is the Nipo I know. Is Nipo you? Okay, that's the Nipo I know. And a hardworking who is also full of wealth of knowledge. And then we've got Njabulo saying, what an inspiring session. South Africa stands to benefit more from your leadership, Mr. Chiliza. And then we've got Sihle saying, indeed a touching one. Is there any initiative to do with giving back to your community? Maybe knowledge sharing with someone who might be in the same situation as yours, but you don't know where to start. Okay, I'll come back to that so you can answer. And then Zippo says, the most humble person. I've learned a lot from you, Mr. Chiliza, and thank you for sharing your inspirational life story. Do you want to respond to Sihle?
Yes, my response to Sihle, and I feel very shy because when you were a student, obviously, you know that you're still vibrant, and I think you're at your peak. So that is why I would encourage, especially if there's young people who are watching the video, because you have different stages of development. And at your youth, that is where you really need to lay a solid foundation for your life. And if you miss that opportunity, after that, it's a decline. It's just that's a topic for another day. But for me, I think when we were students, we established with some of the fellow students an organization called Universal Institute for Human Development. We ran it up to a particular extent. In fact, that organization still exists. Now, I think when my career took another path and we abandoned it. So as part of my future aspiration, because what I'm doing for APSA, to be honest with you, is not, is not, what could I say? I am delivering, but it's not my purpose. It's something that you do to earn a living, to earn a salary at the end of the day. I know what is it that I do that gives me a sense of fulfillment, and it is helping other people. I think it's because of my background. So my future aspiration really is to revive UIHD and to make sure that we deliver the programs. Most of the programs that we have delivered through UIHD are still relevant today because there's still that gap, because our programs were more focusing on personal development more than providing charity work to the needy communities. So wanted to impact a person's life in a sense, to transform a person's mind more than anything else. So that is what I want to do, to resurrect UIHD and to mobilize people who share the same sentiments or the same vision to help me deliver the programs to the community. So Njabulo Cheze was part of this program, or part of the session today, knows that he played a pivotal role in the UIHD. He was one of the directors during the time, but I think all of us had to focus to other areas of our life, like building the family and advancing your career, because you still have to compete in the work environment. It's a competitive environment, Dr. Che and Sil.
Okay, no, that's good to hear. So at least you've got ambition to go back and revive and impact young people, because our young people need a lot of these kind of stories, because sometimes they can easily lose hope, and some of them you find they are in far much better positions than you were. And when they hear such stories, it's really encouraging to make them believe, oh, we can make it, we can do it. It's not as bad as we thought. And there's one thing that I want to pick up from what you said as you were sharing your story. when you said you had to do some, you were a garden boy, at some stage you were staying with somebody, and when you were staying with that person, you made sure that when she come back from work, you have cooked, you have cleaned, you have done all the work there. And what I just want to pick up from that is that you didn't have a sense of entitlement, that somebody owes you something. You felt that you had to contribute, to play your role in that. And I think that will go a long way, really, in terms of our young people, to say, it doesn't matter how poor you are, it doesn't matter how struggling you are, there is always something that you can contribute. It doesn't have to be money, but you've got hands. There is something that you can always contribute. And maybe you can share a bit in terms of lessons that came out of your journey, and one of them in terms of when you had people helping you, and then you took it upon yourself to say, this person doesn't owe me anything, I'm not entitled to these things that this person is providing for me. And then you started doing something as kind of like paying for what you were getting. What are the lessons that you have learned from all those things? So if you can maybe share a few key lessons in your journey, whether for young people or for any professional or anybody, to say, what are the key lessons that you learned from not being entitled, from doing your part, from not giving up, and all those things? What are the key things that you learned from there?
Yeah, I think Dr. J, for me, because this is very important, and I realized it when I was introspecting, because this was an exercise that allowed me to think deeper. Some of the things that I've experienced, I've forgotten. Obviously, I have to put some thoughts together in preparation for the session. But one thing that transpired in my mind is that sometimes we feel, especially as young people, we feel that the people who are above us are entitled, or people who are more progressed than us are responsible for our own success. But that is not the case. And moreover, we don't appreciate even when they're providing us any sort of support. So for me, I think when I did that to the lady, the widow, who assisted me, I really felt deep down my heart. I think it was God's grace. So that is why I said God has always been on my side. That look, this lady has just opened up her house. She's a widow working as a domestic worker, and she's accommodating me. She's going to provide for my food, because I really only had, I think at that time, I only had 600 rands, because I had to travel from Tembisa to Johannesburg on the train whilst I was doing my assessment at CEDA. So I said, no, what is it that I can do? I was a garden boy, so let me clean her yard and do her garden. Let me clean the house. I know how to clean the house. I know how to cook. And that was just to give back to her, to show her that, look, I really appreciate what you do. And I think that I still have to do more. I need to find out where she is and just go and send my token of appreciation. And the people that you see on the screen here as well. So whilst I was introspecting, I felt that I didn't do enough just to go back to them to say thank you for what you have done, because really people don't have an obligation for your development or even for your success. Each and every individual has a responsibility for their own lives, and at different stages you have a particular responsibilities. So maybe just to summarize my lessons at Dr. J, I think the first lesson that people should have is that never allow the current situations or external environment to determine your tomorrow, but let your purpose and your dream to prevail. Because if you allow your purpose, you remove yourself away from the cloud, because the world that we live in is not certain. And the second one, learn and improve from every experience, regardless of how good or bad. I've touched base on that slightly, because sometimes in life, you find yourself in a very good experience. For instance, if I talk about my current situation, such that now you are comfortable where you are, and then now it derail you from from your purpose, what God created for you to achieve your niche. So what I'm saying is, learn from every situation and try to improve from the current stage, from those situations, regardless of how good or how bad they are. And the other one is that, so one thing that I've learned is that life is not perfect. And I don't think that it is meant to be. Okay, so it is so, because now if you look at life, life has a superficial way to define excellence and success. Mainly excellence is defined without failure. So if you flourish, you walk on water, then you are excellent. And then if you have material positions, you are successful. But that is not a true definition of these two concepts. So for me, excellence is when so for me, I think excellence is when you learn from your experiences, regardless of how good or bad. And then success is when you take one step towards your purpose, and that step gives you a sense of purpose. And then the other one, always strive to learn more about yourself. So that talks about self-awareness, because it is only self-awareness that will help you to refine your vision and to understand your purpose. And also it is, I think, the self-awareness that will help you to master the emotional intelligence, because emotional intelligence helps you to interact with the world. And the other one, obviously, never fail to appreciate life and appreciate yourself when you achieve something, regardless of how big or small. So you must applaud yourself, because sometimes world doesn't recognize your efforts or how well or how good you are. So learn to appreciate yourself and never fail also to help other people. So if you have an opportunity to help other people, do so, because that's what will give you even more sense of accomplishment. And so there are so many people who have contributed to my life as I've projected here. So that is why I'm saying, if you are given an opportunity, or if you identify an opportunity to help, do help people. I'm not talking about the material things or money, because those things, they normally destroy people. So I'm talking about many things that are aligned to your purpose. If you know that you have information, help people with information. If you know that you are a good teacher, help people by teaching maybe other individuals about life situations. And if you know that you are a comforter, you must comfort people. So utilize your abilities and gift. So that is where you'll see an impact. Because normally, if you talk about money, money destroys, or material possessions destroy people, especially if you give them without helping them with information on how to manage or to sustain themselves as individuals. So I think, Dr. Che, that is it from me. So those are the key lessons that I've learned throughout my life experiences.
Okay, that's powerful. If maybe I may share. So I met you when you were doing your MBA, and interestingly, when I met you, when you came to contact me, if I may say, your report was in a very bad state, and you had very limited time. But I was shocked what you managed to achieve at the end within that short space of time. Because when you came, one thing I never do, I never give people an impression that this is unrealistic, you're not going to do it. But when you came, I was like, the timeline, is this guy going to make it? But you came, the commitment, the drive, the spirit in which you wanted to learn was just so amazing. And this is something that I just like to pick on and to share, especially with people who are already at tertiary institutions, postgrad and all that. If you are doing research and all those things, whatever you don't know, you can know, and it all depends on your drive. And if you've got the drive, the time limitations and all other things really becomes very minimal. So I was really shocked with your drive and your commitment, and it was amazing. So I don't know you that long, but for that short of space of time that I worked with you, it was amazing. And if you can keep that and keep telling that story to anyone and everybody, I think it's something that will really make a difference to a lot of people, not only just to young people. And we've got like 2 minutes or so to wrap up. I just want to go back to the chat and see whether I've missed anybody's question. I think we've I've seen Lumka just saying very inspirational, and may the youth learn from this. Your perseverance is amazing. Tulani, you have a great and inspirational story. Hard work, perseverance. So everybody is kind of like noting your perseverance and your hard work. Fisos saying, what is Mr. Nhlanipo, thank you for sharing your journey. What is your thought in terms of leaders assisting those that are coming from the same background as you? I'm not sure whether you understand that question. Do you want to answer that? So the question say, what is your thought in terms of leaders assisting those that are coming from the same background as you?
I think I do understand the question, Jay. Maybe to Jay, just to address before I answer the question, because we're about to close, to address the point of MBA. You know, my wife has set high standards for the female. One of the standards is that the minimal qualification within the female is masters. So I was obliged to complete that master in the time frame, just to meet up to the expectation, and also at work, because I've created an impression that I'm one of the high performers, I'm wise. And it was important that I completed the qualifications. So when I came to you, I think the like minds met together, and you really helped me to finish the paper within the pamphlet. And you know that I passed it with the flying colors. So it was not just a finishing. Understand? And to answer Sfiso, I would say this, Sfiso, I believe that every individual, we are leaders, all of us, at different levels. And I believe that every individual has an obligation to go back where they come from, to empower the community, because there's no one who understands the community better than you are. I can assure you that I've neglected my own community of Logos. And I believe that I understand my community better than anyone who would try to go back and empower that community. But the advantage that I have as well, which I believe is resourceful, is worthwhile, to empower the communities, because I grew up in a community. I understand the impoverishments or the situation that the community, that young people or the community in general is experiencing, and understand the other side of the world. So I've learned to be content in scarcity, and I've learned to be content in abundance. So I'm the right person who can take a person through the journey with the right emotions and using classical example than anyone else, because I understand I grew up there and I was able to put myself out of that situation, obviously through the support from other individuals. So the people who assisted me through the way, I think they related to the story, because I narrated my story very well. And that is why I said earlier on, I believe that you are the best person to narrate your own story and to drive your own destiny.
Okay, thank you for that. That's important. We left with a few. Let me just finish up the few here. Tulani says, thanks, leadership. You are such an amazing human being, and I'm grateful to leadership who've played their role so that you can pay it forward and continue to inspire a lot of other people. Polo Keng says, indeed, a very humble individual you can ever come across. His sense of purpose in life is certainly very evident in his personality. Thanks for sharing your story. And Nonkulego says your selflessness and directional leadership is what the current youth need, Mr. Chiliza. I'm glad to hear that you plan to resuscitate the mentorship program. And then Pumla says, very inspirational, Mr. Chiliza. I'm a living proof of your future inspiration. You took me under your wing, and I have learned a lot from you. I am in a better position today because you played a big role in me. We're in God's house. That's the name of the person. What an inspiration, Mr. Chiliza. So those are the comments from both YouTube and Facebook, and the questions that we had. In closing, one advice to young people, it's Youth Month, we have to talk to young people. Just in short, what advice would you give to young people?
So in short, Dr. J, I would say to young people, please have a dream, have a sense of purpose regardless of your situation. And that dream will carry through. For me, I didn't know that I'll be here today. It was only a dream and a sense of purpose that carried me through. Because look, things can work your way or it cannot, but I can assure you that if you have a sense of purpose, at least even if you land in a job like a taxi conductor, you know that a taxi conductor attracts, before people who grew up in Durban, is one of the least respected job because it attracts people who have defaulted in life. And most of the people who are in drugs. And for me, what kept me away from that is because of the vision and the purpose of a better life.
Thank you, Mr. Chiliza. That was wonderful. That was inspiring. That was empowering. And that was amazing. And we really appreciate you spending the time to prepare, to plan, and to come and share your story with our listeners and our viewers. And thank you very much. The one thing that I take that I found very profound is that life is not perfect and it does not have to be. And most of the time, we live to try to get this perfect life that we will never get, and we get disappointed, and then we get depressed because life is not perfect. So if you missed everything that Mr. Chiliza said today, the one thing, please, that you must take home, life is not perfect, and it does not have to be. And you should be content, even if life is not perfect. Thank you for joining us, and that's it for today. And just follow our social media pages at Dr. J Biz, and then you'll get notifications when we've got our conversations, or next time when we've got something similar. And yeah, thank you for joining us. I see a lot of you stayed on till the whole hour. That means the story was really inspiring. Thank you, Mr. Chiliza.
Thank you so much, Dr. J, and the listeners.
Thank you.